Hey everybody, it's Patrick Smith here this year at the fifth annual West Virginia Cybersecurity and Game Developers Expo. I am here with Heath Adams, an amazing cybersecurity expert, mentor, YouTuber. How are you doing, Heath?
I'm doing well, Patrick. Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. When I saw your resume, I definitely wanted to interview you because I feel your resume is intimidating, and I like to. I mean, I'm sure it was a lot of hard work, but I also like to explain to people that it is a journey. It takes the first step, and that first step becomes the second, third, the fourth, and fifth. So, could you tell us a little bit about how you started your journey into this field?
If you talk to a lot of InfoSec people, you'll find that their journeys were these vastly different backgrounds, and you hear people coming from these unique, either college degrees or no college degrees. Or I was an accountant, I was working in accounting. I picked accounting because I thought it was a safe degree, something that you can lean back on, and you'll always have a job if you have an accounting degree. So that was kind of my thought, but it wasn't really something that I was incredibly passionate about. Long story short, I had taken a job that was kind of like a final straw for me, where I moved away from home, I moved away from friends and everything, just for a small increase in pay. And we're not talking a lot of money, just a small increase, but it was a lot to me. And I was living in the middle of nowhere, driving 45 minutes each way to work. It was dark when I left. It was dark when I got home. Had one of those terrible managers from hell. And, I eventually just thought about it, and I walked out one day at work. I just had enough. I said, this isn't me. This isn't my life. I chose something that I didn't think that was really for me, but just was safe, and more or less chasing money than anything else. And I went out on a whim. I broke my lease. I moved out west, and I said, I'm going to figure this out, what I want to do. And for me personally, like, IT has been something that I was always interested in. I never pulled the trigger. I never made that leap. Where I had a computer since I was 4 years old. I was on Prodigy before AOL. Then I was on AOL. I remember my mom took college classes, like community college classes, when I was about 10, and she was taking HTML and algebra. And so I was going through her books, and I was building websites, and I was doing algebra, and I was learning all these like different concepts. We were building chatbots and stuff in Visual Basic for AOL. So like the passion was always there, and the precursors were always there. I just didn't know within myself that that's what it was. And like I think when you're asked to pick a college degree at 18 years old, it's very difficult to really decide what you want to do for the rest of your life. So it took me a while to figure out that, hey, it's IT. Once I did, I went down the path that's pretty traditional. I think I found a job that would take me, and that was a help desk position. So basically, people submitting tickets, you responding to those tickets, you help people fix their problems. And built that into a network engineer position, eventually into being an ethical hacker, and then moving into having my own company.
I got to tell you, it's refreshing to talk to somebody who remembers Prodigy and who probably had such a I've lost the word. I've lost the nice word for it now, but the old word is leet. My AOL handle was LCS. It was my dad's initials, and people were like, "You had a three-letter AOL account?" I was like, "Yeah, I did." And unfortunately, I gave it up before AIM came along because then I
Oh
could
man.
accept it. But yeah, it's it's nice to talk to somebody who, because when I do my podcast a lot, I'm like, "So what was your first gaming system?" And people are like, "PlayStation 2." I'm like, "Oh, that hurts."
Yeah,
So yes, it's nice to hear somebody that knows the history because they lived through the history.
absolutely.
With me, that type of thing. So yeah, it's refreshing to hear too that you came through the exact same steps so many people do, cutting your teeth in help desk and then working your way up. Because so many of my students say, help desk, like that's just a dead end area, and I try to explain to them that, like, help desk is being thrown to the wolves, but in a good way, because you suddenly your mind gets broadened to all these different concepts. You don't
Hmm.
know which of the 40 clients that company has that's going to be calling you, asking you about Exchange or about SharePoint or about some router over here or Juniper network, something like that. And then suddenly you get really good at then get on your feet. So working your way through that. So it's great. But everybody always thinks it's like, the crap job. But I say you will learn so much. And a lot of times I've had students who leave here, like we predominantly teach networking classes. Like I saw you have your CCNA. We teach CCNA, MCSE, the CompTIAs, some of the EC councils. They'll leave here and they may work for a company that does a lot of Cisco voice. We don't have the option to offer telephony classes here, but they'll go, oh, this is nice. And they'll decide, even once they've graduated, they've now found the niche they want to go into and they want to play with. So, yeah, it's just reassuring to hear that everybody goes that way and you can find your path from there. So, and I kind of mentioned this a little bit already up front, but what certifications along the path did you get? And at this point too, I guess the double question would be, do you feel like in your position in cybersecurity, do you feel there's a experience versus certification? Are they both good, or which angle should you approach from your opinion?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I'll kind of go in the order that I got the certifications, and I've got a bunch more that are like above and beyond on the hacking side. But for my path from help desk into ethical hacking, when I got my help desk job, I didn't have any certifications, and you're absolutely right. That is the best way to get thrown to the wolves and learn everything. So I didn't know what basic protocols were, like DHCP, DNS. I could fix a lot of stuff. I could Google, but in terms of the networking protocols and understanding what they did and why they were important, I didn't know any of that stuff at that time. So part of that on-the-job experience, getting to see everything, like the jack of all trades, really helped. Having people above you that could explain that stuff and mentors, that really helped. But then on the other side of it, the exams helped too. Studying for like the A+ was the first one I took. I would learn some tips and tricks in there that, I found to be useful for working on the job. And same thing with the Net Plus. The Net Plus, even just hammering down the ports and the protocols, just made you, better at your job. The hands-on experience is by far the best, but there's still education in the theory and the flip side of it, where if you learn that, you're just going to be better overall. So I went A+, Net Plus, Security Plus, did the triad pretty much right away. And then we actually got thrown the wolves again. We had a client that we picked up that was like this statistical modeling company, and they ran all Linux, all like these crazy rig systems, like all kinds of graphics cards built in. I've never seen anything like tens of thousands of dollars in one system.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they were great. And they were so anyway, they picked up the client, and the client was like, do you know Linux? And they're like, yeah, we know Linux. Nobody on the team knew Linux. So that, just like I went on site, I figured it out kind of on my own, but at the same time I studied for the Linux Plus just to get that out of the way and to force me and challenge me to learn something. So along the way too, I had a coworker tell me, did you know that there is a ethical hacker job? You could be an ethical hacker. At that point in time, I thought, wow, I didn't know you could get paid to be a good guy. I just figured they were the people who were stealing the money and, ransomware and all that stuff. So I went out and I did the CEH. And from there, I ended up getting applying for a job at a national lab here in the States, and ended up working as a network engineer. From there, I got my CCNA and I did my OSCP, which is like the, kind of like the golden certification when it comes to ethical hacking, or at least trying to break into the field. I did my OSCP and my OSWP, which is like the wireless version of the hacking certification. And then I utilized that to move into a pen testing role. And then from there, like any certification I've got from there has just been kind of trying to move up or trying to learn a different specialty and just improving upon those. So yeah, it's definitely the certifications definitely help. And I think it's a two-headed approach. Like you definitely need the experience, and you definitely should have some certifications because they help you get your foot in the door. Which way you want to take it, I think, is up to you. I think like finding the way I found a job was that I put myself out there. I know a lot of people are afraid because they say you'd have to have 5 years experience for this entry level job and all this stuff, but you just apply and see what happens. The worst thing that can happen is they say no. So you put yourself out there, you have a good interview. In my interview, I was honest. I said, I don't know, but I'm willing to learn. I will do what I can do and put in the time and effort in order to be successful at my job. So, just having that motivation, that sense of reality, and just being honest, I think in interviews helps. But yeah, it's really having the A+ definitely would have helped me get more interviews, I think. So in that terms of lack of experience there, but the experience also with the certifications helped me move up. And then it's kind of just like you have to balance that out. I have seen people go from getting an OSCP and maybe coming out of college and just going right into pen testing. It's not that I necessarily advocate for that. It's possible with patience. I do think that if you don't have a solid foundation in IT, becoming a hacker is going to be difficult because there's just a Linux foundation, a networking aspect. You have to be able to talk the shop to other people that are experienced in web dev, experienced in networking. So if you don't understand all the terms and protocols and everything else, you're just going to look silly in front of them when you're consulting them on how to fix their problems. So it's possible, but I'm an advocate for getting some experience in the field and doing certifications at the same time.
Okay. Which, out of curiosity, were you doing the like the IC&D 1 and 2 when you did the CCNA, the typical routing switching, or did you go into security or cyber ops?
No, I did the 1 and 2, and I had a coworker who was just absolutely brilliant when it came to Cisco, and he failed the combined. So I was like, I'm not doing the combined if you're not going to be able to pass this. So I think the strong advocate. I took the last exam, but I think still a strong advocate is to take 1 and 2 in order and not try to do the combined.
Unfortunately, there's no such thing anymore.
No? Oh man.
Well, they killed the CCNT, so they killed IC&D 1.
Oh,
So now there's only one CCNA now, and that's just the regular routing and switching, and then everything's going to be CCNP. So we get to deal with that because we're a Microsoft Academy, we're a Cisco Academy, and we're a CompTIA Academy. So we have to figure out how we're going to teach this stuff in 6 months. So when
gotcha.
they're like, hey, guess what? It's February. We're going to change this in October. We start freaking out and trying to figure out like how's it going to work for us in a 2-year cycle. So
That's brutal.
Yeah, unfortunately, no more CCNT.
Yeah.
But I think it's great that you mentioned that you just told them up front you don't. There was things you don't know, because I do try to explain to my students that when I first got out of college, there was a couple of internships I took where I bit off more than I could chew, and I got fired. That was like the one time I got fired, and I try to tell them that because I try to say, like, look, in class, you all look at me as the expert, but I want you to know, like, I wasn't always the expert. And also, if you ask me something outside of my wheelhouse, I'm definitely going to tell you, go down the hall and talk to Professor Nicholas or go talk to Professor Loker, because I'm comfortable in telling you what I do know and what I don't know now. And that's one of the biggest things when you're going into an interview. Half the time, they can teach you that stuff. They can teach you the technology. They're going to try to figure out if you're honest, if you're good with people on the phone, that type of thing. So there are, trainable skills, the soft skills, hopefully you've already picked up. So I think that's great. And I always tell my students, know what the OSI model means, why you would use it, because it's very great on breaking down a complex problem and trying to get to the root of it. So they always roll their eyes, but inevitably they hear about it in an interview. So it's very important in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
So at this point, I know you've got a couple plates spinning. So what does your current position look like personally and corporately?
Yeah, so I do have like kind of a double-headed, I guess, job roles. On one side, I have my own pen testing company, so we're a cybersecurity company, traditional basic cybersecurity boutique and consulting. So risk assessments, pen tests, anything that you'll let us try to break into, we'll do it for you. Whether that's networks, web applications, mobile applications, IoT devices. Even down to like wireless networks, physical security, like legal breaking and entering. So we get to have a lot of fun. And on the same side of that kind of is we also have an academy. So the academy is where we have like training courses and videos that are, we try to keep them relatively cheap for students. And we have, I think it's over 200,000 is the last count students. So we've got three ethical hacking courses right now. And then we've got more in line. One's coming out this month, and then we'll have one pretty much every quarter. So that's one side. And the other side is, I guess I'm an internet personality where I go by the Cyber Mentor online, and I have a YouTube channel, which is doing fairly well. I have a Twitch channel where we're partners. So we live stream hacking 3 times a week. I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn if anybody wants to find me. But yeah, it's basically all educational and life advice revolving around cybersecurity, ethical hacking, and just kind of how to break in the field and how to hack as well. So that's kind of my double life, I guess.
So TCM Security is both your hacking company, your pen test company, and also where someone can go and get the courseware you were talking about.
Exactly. Yeah. If you go on TCM Security's website, there's a link that says Academy that will take you to the Academy page. But it's just a academy subdomain essentially.
Okay. And if people want to find you out there on Twitter and Twitch, feel free to throw out your handle so they can go ahead and follow you.
Yeah, it's pretty much the Cyber Mentor everywhere. So unless it's LinkedIn, you can find me at Heath Adams. But otherwise, the Cyber Mentor pretty much everywhere.
Okay. So based on you running a company that will go out and do penetration tests and that type of thing, are there any memorable stories that you can tell us that may stick out in your mind about cautionary tales that people have had to live through?
Yeah, there's probably quite a few. One that I tell kind of often is this larger company that we were doing a pen test against, big equipment company is what I can say. And we were doing an external and internal pen test, which means external means we're trying to hack you from the outside, and then internal means we'll try to hack you as if we've gained access inside your network. So from the outside, we did what was called, credential stuffing and password spraying. So credential stuffing is going out and finding users that have been in breaches. So like the have I been pwned of the world.
Mm-hmm.
But any of like the LinkedIn breach or the Adobe or any of the big breaches, they have the hashes they'll pull down and people will go crack those hashes and they'll put them into these curated lists. So then you can go search and say, oh, Bob works at abc.com. I'm going to go search abc.com and find all the credentials that would be for those users. And then you can start pairing them even more intelligently. Do they have password patterns? Can you take that password and put it back into the search engine and find personal emails and start tying those emails to other passwords, et cetera. And it starts to become this game of research, really, and then plugging that in. So you take those passwords and those usernames and you plug them into login interfaces. And from there, we did that. We got access to like this old Lotus Notes server, which has its own vulnerability in the sense that you can dump all the users as long as you have a user, all the users and their passwords. So we did that. None of those passwords worked either, but we have this huge username database now of like thousands of users. So we go to Office. I think actually they might have had on-prem Exchange. So we start spraying their Exchange with things like winter 2020 exclamation, or in an election season right now, Trump 2020, Biden 2020, they're going to be everywhere. So like these are just common passwords that you can utilize against these, like especially in volume. Something's going to hit. And as soon as one hits, if there's no multi-factor or anything preventing you to log into email or VPN, which there wasn't, you're on the network. So we utilize that to get on the network. And the memorable part of the story is starting now is where I called up the manager and I said, hey, we're in your network. And he said to me, well, what kind of user are you? And I said, well, we're a low level user right now. But that's not the point. We're in your network. And he's like, oh, you're low level. It doesn't really matter. So it's kind of a little bit of just like, felt like you don't taunt your pen tester. You don't say, hey, that's insignificant when we're trying to tell you this is a pretty big deal. So we start doing more pen testing now that we're inside the network, and we start running what's called LLMNR poisoning. Basically, it's a man-in-the-middle attack that will send credentials, like domain credentials, NTLM v2 credentials to you if you intercept them in a man-in-the-middle situation. And I intercepted his hash, cracked his hash, and it was his name with a 1 after it. So that was great. So he was a domain admin. That took down the network pretty much right away. And if you're going to say, what can you do? It was over that fast. You probably should have a stronger password than your name with a 1 after it. So that's one of my fun stories to tell is just like your pen tester's on your side. We're trying to help. So if we're telling you something is critical, you should probably take it pretty serious.
Sure. Well, I even thought about the pass the hash. The second you can get a domain account, you can do a lot. So
yep.
Yeah, don't tempt people. But speaking of that, it makes me wonder. In my class we talk about. I'm the big Microsoft guy, so we're constantly talking about group policy, how we can do password complexity. And now it's a big discussion about how the fact is the NIST guidelines, the guy who helped write those said, I made a monster basically. A lot of the passwords are easily hackable because it's very easy to assume what people are going to throw in as symbols and stuff. So someone who's able to make their password Patrick1, we want to stop that. So we turn on password complexity to where it's going to be harder. But then someone will come up with some other curiosity, which is they're saying now if you go ahead and like string together 4 random words, you've got a great password. But we don't have that system in place. So what's your opinion when you're talking to people about like, do you turn off password complexity and just hope and pray? Maybe you make the length be like 20 or something and hope and pray they do better, or what's your advice for that?
Yeah, so honestly, the longest password I've cracked was 19 characters, and that was a Bible verse. So even then, like our recommendation is intentionally misspell words or use long sentences or do something that is personal to you. But when we talk to these companies and we make recommendations, what we say is, 12 minimum, but if you could even go longer than that, that's better. And we also will provide them with password lists. So anything that's ever showed up in a breach list, we tell them, hey, here's that list. Try to go ahead and just, make sure they can't use these as a password in the future. And then also negate anything with like 2020 in it or any of the years or those common type passwords. If you can eliminate dictionary words or even like attempt to get rid of that into a sense and make a longer password, that's all it is anymore. Yeah, complexity helped, but it's just becoming to the point where we have these supercomputers and we have these graphic cards and the capabilities to crack these character passwords insanely fast, especially if they're common words or dictionary words. The more scrambled and jumbled it is, and the longer it is, the harder it's going to be, and more impossible it's probably going to be for us to get it, unless somehow we intercept or capture it in clear text somewhere.
Okay. Well, thanks for that. That's some good advice.
Yep.
So my next question, kind of, is there any advice or pitfalls you've seen that somebody might want to avoid, short of obviously like getting a police record isn't going to do very well when you're like, hey, I want to break into your company. Oh, by the way, I'm a felon. But
yeah,
in getting into the industry, any advice you would have to things to avoid?
My biggest is complacency. Like you talk about the help desk person, and you might see somebody who's working at the same job for 5 or 10 years, but that does not have to be you. That person can be happy and content being who they are and doing what they want. But if you want to work, especially in information security and especially in ethical hacking, you have to be somebody that is absolutely passionate and loves to study. It sounds sexy, it sounds James Bond, and it really is fun. But there's so much burnout and there's so many people just like thinking that they want to get in and then realizing the amount of work that it actually takes. If you're not a lifelong learner, then this isn't a job for you, because it's always cat and mouse. There's always a new attack. There's always a new defense, and you have to stay on top of the game. So my biggest advice is just do not be complacent. If you're not complacent, if you love to study, if you think this is exciting and you feel like I can go work 40 hours and then I can put in more time after work studying or playing around or doing labs or CTFs, and it doesn't feel like working, time just goes by and you're like, where did it go? That's when you know this is the kind of field for you. If you're thinking about it because it sounds cool or because we make a lot of money, those are true things, but it's not the reason to get into it. I think it's a common pitfall. Like, don't chase it for the money, chase it for the passion. The money will follow you. So yeah, definitely on the complacency. I see a lot of that anywhere you go in IT. I feel like the higher you get up, the less you see it. But even in the pen testing field, we see complacency. But like the pen testers are more of those personalities where they're always studying, they're always learning, they're always just on top of their game. That's kind of where you have to be.
I completely 100% agree. I tell my students, if you think you're going to get through a 2-year program here and then never touch a book again, you're wrong. Go into math, go into English.
Yeah.
Pythagorean theorem's been around for a couple hundred years.
Yep.
But I explained to them that I've been in MCSE since NT4, and I had to recertify in 2000, 2003, 2008, 2012, 2016. It keeps on doing. Every 3 years, they're going to have to do this. So they got to stay on top. And no one's going to want to hire somebody who got their A+ in 1979. They want someone who's up to date. So, yeah, that's excellent advice. Have you done any recruiting for your company? And if so, like any advice you would have for somebody who's going out there and trying to pitch themselves to somebody?
Yeah, so definitely there's a few advice I have. definitely try to make yourself stand out. And like, if you're being competitive, say I get an application that's got a college degree and it's got an OSCP, that's great. Like I might be interested in talking to you, but I'm even more interested in talking to the person that's built a home lab, that's written a blog, that goes and does talks at cybersecurity conferences, that attends cybersecurity conferences or volunteers at them, that is a community person or community presence or goes to a meetup, because that tells me that you're passionate. Anybody can go through a college degree. Like you said, you could do your 2 years and be done and check out. But I want to see the person that is passionate to the point that they're doing extra. They're going out and just doing stuff. As an example, though, I was hiring recently for a sales position, and I got tons and tons and tons of applications. And the sales position, it said in there, like, this is going to be a cold calling, this is going to be sales. And one person cold called me. One person of all the applications called me on the phone, said, look, like, let me sell myself to you and let me tell you, how I want to do. And that was perfect. That's what I wanted. You have to be the job and you have to fit the requirements, and you have to take that extra step. And somebody else, like an intern that I brought on that I was working with, he went above and beyond, where he was helping out and just answering questions in the Discord server that we have. And he was just like helping other people out, and he was helping out on Udemy and on the Academy and stuff like that, to where he was doing this all for free, not asking for a single thing, but just showing that he was contributing back to the community. And that's somebody that I know is passionate and willing to learn and willing to put in the effort, and somebody that I would look more closely at, because you're looking for the fine details when you're hiring. Everybody, when you get to pen testing, especially, everybody kind of has a similar resume that they kind of get their foot into the door with, because you have these almost like these minimums. You're just looking for these differentials, and the differentials is definitely community impact and your passion and what you can show me.
I think, yeah, I completely agree. I think that even harkens back a little bit to having to stay fresh too, because clearly if they come in and they're going to conferences without being told and all this, they're loving this. They're not just punching a time clock and coming in here, because those people are going to be sticks in the mud and not want to go ahead and stay up to date and stay current.
Exactly.
They're already working on their own. That's motivation that when they come into your company, they're also going to want to expand. Because if you hire them with those certifications, you're going to expect them to keep them up to date. So that's fantastic advice.
Yep.
Heath, do you have anything else that I haven't mentioned that you want to bring up, or extra advice you might want to impart to people?
I mean, I've kind of said it, but I'll summarize. This is definitely, if you're interested in information security, it is a great field. It's well paying. You're never going to go hungry. There's tons and tons of work and opportunities out there if you are willing to put in the work, if you are willing to be somebody who studies, if you're somebody that is not complacent. You have to be honest. You have to, like I said, when it comes to jobs, be honest. You can ignore the requirements. When it comes to those job applications, just apply anyway. Try to be the dumbest person in the room. It's okay to not know everything. It's okay to have somebody mentor you. And it's okay to, mentor other people too. I think that's one of the greatest ways to learn, is to teach. That certainly keeps me fresh. So going out and giving back to the community, writing blogs helps keep you fresh. Taking good notes, etc., really helps. Other than that advice, you're welcome to follow me on YouTube, the Cyber Mentor, and Twitch again, or Twitter. And then if you want to check out the Academy and the courses that we have, they're all under $30, and we're always running promotions for even cheaper than that. So that's over at tcm-sec.com.
Heath Adams, thank you so much for your time and your advice. I'm sure my audience will find this absolutely fascinating, and everyone go and check out his courseware at TCM Security and the Cyber Mentor on YouTube. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.